politicians, producers, and pastors, administrators, actors, and athletes. You know, the list of offenders just keeps growing and growing, and you can't help but wonder, who's next? Well, sadly, we're becoming numb to the headlines that another executive or physician or coach abused his power and assumed that the rules just didn't apply to someone in his position. And what's worse? Well, some of these guys didn't even know they were breaking the rules. Well, how does that happen? Maybe it was born out of an old school men's club culture where sexual innuendos and racial slurs were not only tolerated, well, they were the unofficial currency of a backslapping inner circle. But you know what? The culture is shifting, and we're no longer looking the other way at such asinine behavior. By the way, definition of asinine is extremely stupid or foolish. And as the culture shifts, well, these fools will eventually expose themselves. But we need to zoom out and see the bigger picture. You see, there's a broad category that includes, but it's not limited to, misogynists and sex offenders. And on the surface, well, it can look like a who's who list of the well-educated and the well-groomed. Some are highly successful and even well-churched. They're the charismatic influencers with a critical mass of social media friends and followers. So they have a voice and they have a platform. And there are some churches that are even built on and feed off of their personalities. Well, how can these men, knowing that they are under the scrutiny of an increasingly skeptical public, continue to speak out against the splinters in the eyes of others while ignoring the massive logs in their own? Well, I can see three fatal mistakes. Number one, smokescreen comparisons. You see, compared to blatant sexual harassment, well, someone who subtly dismisses others may not seem so bad. And their anger, well, that can be excused because, hey, they're a passionate leader. But it all flows from the same systemic problems of pride and arrogance, control and insecurity. Beware of smokescreen comparisons, these misdirection tactics to avoid tackling the deeper issues, the character flaws that are infecting and slowly undermining organizations and their influence. Number two, faux accountability. You see, with great success can come this slow drift away from those who will call us out and hold us accountable towards a select team whose support for their leader has actually clouded their vision. So they've stopped asking the hard questions. And these yes men have unknowingly turned encouragement and guidance into spinning the truth and stroking an insecure ego. Proverbs 15:22 says, "Plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed." Now, here's the thing. The promise in this principle depends on having the right advisors. Do they possess wisdom and courage? Has their ability to advise been compromised because of a conflict of interest? Are they known for their honesty and integrity or their tendency to avoid conflict? Proverbs 13:20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm." Be sure that your advisors are not just a facade of mentors who are providing faux accountability. And finally, number three, it's the "I'm only human" excuse. Now, it is true. We're only human. We all make mistakes. But don't use that as an excuse for bad behavior. None of us are perfect, but the way we handle our imperfections can either bring healing or compound the damage. It's just too easy to justify our behavior by saying, nobody's perfect. Well, God responds to our sin with grace for sure, but not to approve it, but to forgive and to transform us. The Apostle Paul understood that. He understood the disparity between his humanness and God's righteousness. He understood the application of God's grace to his sin. And so he asks and he answers a very good question in his letter to first century Christians in Rome. He says, "Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? By no means," he says. "We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer?" In other words, don't tap out by saying, "I'm only human." Styx, an American rock band from Chicago, released several top 10 songs from the 70s through the 90s. Well, among all those hits, I think the most thought-provoking one is this. It's called "Show Me the Way." And the lyrics sound like a disillusioned essay that could have been written today in response to the growing roster of fallen leaders. Here's what it says. "Every night I say a prayer in the hope that there's a heaven. And every day I'm more confused as the saints turn into sinners. All the heroes and legends I knew as a child have fallen to idols of clay. And I feel this empty place inside, so afraid that I've lost my faith. Show me the way." So hey, what's in your closet? Will you try to contain it and spin it, hoping no one cracks open the door and sees what's really inside? Or will you finally get honest with yourself and deal with it responsibly, with humility and real accountability?